Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you're listening, welcome to Way Outta Here, the Philly sports podcast with fan perspective from way outside the greater Philadelphia area. My name is Steve Prudente, here with you as always to check in with you for the next half hour or so. Got a lot to get into today. First and foremost, I'm recording on Wednesday, February 4th. I'd like to wish all of you Eagles fans out there a happy anniversary to our 2017-18 Eagles Super Bowl win. It was on this day 8 years ago today. Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson coached, completed the improbable and won our very first Super Bowl, a day that will always live near and dear in my heart and yours as well, I'm sure. Before I get into today's podcast, I'd like, as always, to remind you to subscribe to me on the social media platform of your choice on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Way Outta Here Podcast on Blue Sky, Way Outta Here Pod. On the blog, wayoutaherepodcast.blogspot.com. And if you've got any feedback or any beer suggestions, you can send me an email to wayoutaherepodcast@gmail.com. I'm available just about wherever you get your podcasts. On Apple and Spotify, a rating would be awesome. On Apple, a review would be even awesomer. Thank you so much in advance. I will begin, as I always do, by introducing the beer of the show. Today's selection is Mooey by Bonn Place Brewing in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I'll have more on that at the end of the show. Alright, let's get into it. Today's topic, as you probably have guessed from the episode title and description, is leaving Negadelphia. If you don't know what that term is, you may or may not have heard it before. I will describe it a little bit and tell you all about why I chose this particular topic today. It's something that's been on my mind for quite a while, but it was recently brought back to the forefront of my mind after listening to the Flyers Daily podcast with Jason Myrtetus a couple of days ago. He mentioned that he was kind of annoyed, upset, and totally done with some of the online discourse he was seeing on Twitter and other social media platforms. I also was noticing myself last couple of days. There was a Reddit post about the Spit and Chickless podcast. I don't listen to that show. It's just not my cup of tea when it comes to hockey podcasts, or I guess podcasts in general. But I was told that Paul Biz had some rather not so nice words, and then his co-host Ryan Whitney also had some not so kind words about us as Flyers fans and the very negative attitudes that we have at times. I say we, the royal we, not everybody, not necessarily me, but that was part of this whole atmosphere that was brewing, this negative atmosphere. My decision to leave Twitter about a year ago, I have no regrets on it, but I don't see a lot of this stuff, but I see other places and other podcasts talking about it and what is out there, that people see a lot of negative attitudes. And it's not just with regard to the Flyers, it is the overall Philly sports fan landscape. I want to say that things have gotten better over the last few years. I'm pretty sure that they have, honestly. But we'll get into all that because there is overall a negative perception of Philadelphia fans that will probably be there for a very, very long time, if not for all time. Some of it's justified, some of it's not, but what I really wanted to get to was the difference between what a lot of people see online, what is actually happening, and how that differs from how I partake in sports viewing and enjoyment. So, first and foremost, I would like to mention that what you see on social media in sports fandom and movie fandom, politics, news, anything like that, people that are actually taking the time to engage and use their time and energy to put out comments and posts and things like that, it's mostly a vocal minority, and they're saying these things, but this unfortunately does create that bad perception I was talking about. So let's just do some rough math here. If you think about it this way, we have, I don't know how many millions of social media users in Facebook and Twitter and Blue Sky and all of the other channels out there. But if you look at that as a percentage of the population of this country, it is not even, it's but a fraction of what the actual number of people out there are in the actual whole society of America. And then if you look at that on a more micro level, as far as the fan bases are concerned. You're talking that some of these social media people presences, online profiles are maybe in the hundreds of thousands, but there's probably several million fans across the country and across the world that support these teams. So if you look at that, and just by the sheer number of things, there are not only a minority of the fans that are on the social media platforms, but then the people who actually engage in these sorts of discussions are such an even smaller percentage of it that it is in no way representative of how the whole fan base thinks. So that's the first thing. I'd also like to mention right off the bat that I do try to keep things as positive as possible or as realistic as possible on my sports social media profiles. My personal Instagram and Facebook pages are a little bit of a different story. Sometimes I get upset with current events and I try to limit that, but I just wanted to throw that out there, mention that I'm not without fault in this sort of thing, but I wanted to get the broad landscape out there first before I went any further into this, because for my own perspective, my own personal opinions on sports are still about being fun for me, and maybe even more so now than they were when I was growing up. And I like to look at things in a more, I like to put it, realistic view, as opposed to always being negative or even always being overly positive. There are certainly those people too. They're fewer and further between, but people who are on one end of the spectrum, the other end of the spectrum, and then there's always the milky middle. I guess I would put myself in there, but there are people who are just so engaged and neurotic about every little thing that the team does, positive or negative. It is just, it's almost funny. At times I've had to talk people off ledges. They've had to talk me off of ledges. Those are the type of people that I like to engage with. And as I said before, I deleted my Twitter profiles a little over a year ago, and I have no regrets on that. I don't know that it's actually true or you can quantify this, but the blue sky atmosphere is seeming to me like a much more positive interaction with fan base. Reddit to a lesser extent as well. I feel like I engage with a lot of people who are similar to me on Reddit that have similar viewpoints on how these things are going and what we would like to see these teams do. But, you know, it's all just, I think people sometimes get into their echo chambers, and then there's this atmosphere or this, perception out there that everybody's negative and everything is bad. That is why coaches and GMs should not listen to the fans, because the ones that are actually putting this stuff out there are definitely not the whole of us. There is also the unfortunate reality that what gets clicks and likes and engagement on social media are things that are hot takey or extremist views, but on just about anything, any subject you can think out there. And that's where you're talking about the certain things like, hey, fire the coach. Now, I have said that a lot of times jokingly. There have been very few times in my sports viewing life that I've actually meant it. And I like to put that out there just because sometimes I do it for comedic value. But there are so many people out there that are so quick to pull these triggers. I understand emotional reactions like right after a big loss, a devastating defeat. That's the time that those kind of things are going to be out there. And then after you've had a few hours or even days or weeks to think about things, you might come back down to earth. Some people don't. The examples I can think of right now, I mean, I would not fire any coach in Philly right this minute, but you're seeing all of these kinds of takes out there. I mean, Nick Sirianni, even after the season ended, still winning season, made the playoffs. They fired the offensive coordinator, or I guess parted ways with him, and kept Nick Sirianni, have made some changes to the staff, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the podcast. There are still people out there that want him fired. As I've said before on this podcast, I'm pretty sure if a guy wins a Super Bowl, you've got at least a 3-year grace period, if not longer, from me to continue to try to build a successful team, or I guess keep your team being a successful team. So firing Nick Sirianni right now is just absolutely crazy to me. Rick Tocchet is another one. In his first season as Flyers head coach, we are 4 months into the season, just barely past the halfway point, and because the team's been on a recent swoon and a bad stretch of play, people are calling for his head, saying, oh my god, I can't believe we already had this happen, so many former Flyers, rinse, repeat, yada yada yada. Also crazy in my opinion. Rob Thompson, manager of the Phillies, you could maybe make a sensible case for letting him go after last season, but the guy is, without a doubt, the numbers bear it out, a successful manager on paper, other than having he's gotten to a World Series, other than having a World Series title under his belt. Successful manager. Like I said, you could maybe make a reasonable case for him because he's been there for a while and has not gotten the ultimate goal, but I still think firing him would be crazy as well. And then, of course, there's Nick Nurse and Bradley Carnell, the Sixers and Union coaches, respectively. I didn't think even after last season Nick Nurse was really going to get let go. There's certainly people out there that were suggesting it, but that was kind of a perfect storm of things that just went wrong. And Bradley Carnell did a fantastic job by all measures in his first season as Union head coach. I don't think anybody's calling for his head, more so upper management, but there are definitely those takes out there. Very, very small group of people saying those things. The other big things that are negative out there, and we're going to turn this to the positive, I promise to you. Matvei Mishkov and the Flyers' rebuild questions have been constantly under scrutiny, well, basically since he was drafted 3 years ago and came over early last season. Look, I understand being frustrated with the mediocrity that has plagued this team for the better part of the last decade and a half, and even beyond that. I mean, I've been here since the 80s. Granted, I was a very young fan back then, but if you look at the record of the team, yes, they've had a whole lot of winning seasons, but they haven't really gotten anywhere. We've experienced several rebuilds and haven't gotten anywhere, so I understand where you're coming from, but I would not be so crazy and so negative as some of the things I'm seeing online. Similarly with the Sixers, you could probably make a more reasonable case to be negative about that team, even though they are doing well currently this season. But I've already gone over my struggles with being a fan of this team since the 2001 season when they made it to the NBA Finals with Allen Iverson. I did that on episode 47 after the Sixers lost embarrassingly to the Boston Celtics in Game 7. We don't really need to go more in depth on that there. I totally understand the sentiments of being negative around the team. That said, it is possible to look at this in a different way and not be so damn downtrodden all the time, because it is just sports. And as I said before, it should be fun. Now, I say that acknowledging full well that since I've been on this planet, there have been 3 championships I have seen in 182 possible seasons between all 5 of the teams. I totally understand it. And I also admit that during the early 80s, I was not really cognizant of what was going on in the sports universe. I can barely remember parts of those days because I was just far too young, but still, 3 out of 182. Yeah, that's not a great winning record. But that's what being a sports fan is. And you're going to have a whole lot more losses than you do wins when it comes to actually winning championships. As far as regular seasons go, yes, you will have hopefully a ton of regular season wins and hopefully a lot of other memorable playoff moments along the way to getting those titles. But actually winning a title is very few and far between, especially as leagues have expanded. The talent pools have gotten more diverse and also expanded as well. The parity in some of these leagues is better than we've ever and stronger than we've ever seen in our lives. Look, I totally understand where people come from. However, the older I get, I can't dedicate energy to a negative mindset when it comes to rooting for my teams. I'm still in my 40s, and I'm thankful that I should still have half my life ahead of me, maybe more than, depending on how well I take care of myself, but that's a topic for another podcast or another discussion. So if I could simplify it this way, I try to criticize but not sensationalize when something bad happens to our teams, because Lord knows we have had plenty of terrible heartbreaks and bad experiences being fans. As I said, in the heat of the moment after a tremendous loss, a devastating defeat, it's understandable to have some extremist takes out there. But as more I watch and listen and learn and talk to other people who are fans like me all around the United States and even around the globe, educating myself on other processes I see teams go through and my own teams go through, what goes on behind the scenes, what it's taken to build a championship team, has helped me to understand and appreciate and be a little bit more level-headed about it. Of course, I'm not always right either. I'm not always level-headed, but I try to look at it that way. Better conversations have happened as a result, even with enemies, like rival fans that I've talked to as a result of just trying to look at things this way instead of always being so damn, well, crazy about it. So, in conclusion, if we could possibly turn Negadelphia into REALadelphia, where people start to look at the sports landscape more realistically, that would be something that I'm absolutely here for, and I continue to try to foster both through this podcast and my interactions with sports fans in my travels all around wherever I go. So I'll get off my soapbox. I hope that you found something illuminating on this. I welcome your feedback, your opinions, how you view our current sports landscape, and how you choose to watch our teams and follow our teams in general as we go about things. I know that things are not always rosy and perfect, but some of this crazy, absolutely nutty negativity that I see online sometimes makes me just want to tune out. And then I do, on occasion. But with that wrapped up, I will get into some thoughts on the current state of the teams. And as I said before, not everything's perfect, but there's still plenty of reason to be optimistic about things here. The Sixers, oddly enough, how far we've come. The team that perhaps has had the most negativity surrounding it over the last, 10, 15 years because of the process and so on and so forth, they're actually leading the positivity charge right now. LOL. Paul George was suspended 25 games for a banned substance. He claimed that it was something he was taking for his mental health. All right, I'm not going to fault you for that. I still just wonder how this happens with professional athletes. You know that the Players Association has a certain list of things that you can and cannot take. If a doctor prescribes you something, you can get an exemption for it. They didn't really reveal what he actually took and what caused him to trigger this result. But still, if it's not on the list, and you know that, you should, as a professional athlete, I feel like you should really know everything that's going into your body. And for him to just have that kind of oversight, I just don't understand it. But at any rate, he will be out for 25 games, which is almost the end of the regular season. It may have complicated the Sixers' trade deadline decisions, which is tomorrow, Thursday, February 5th. But maybe not, actually, because they get some sort of a tax relief benefit from him not being on the court and not playing at this time. I don't quite understand the NBA salary cap rules. I kind of hate their salary cap, but I guess it works, and you have to be a genius to figure it out. But whatever the case may be, they are apparently only 1.3 million, I believe, over the luxury tax currently, and in past recent trade deadlines, especially last year, they ducked some salary to get under that tax to avoid paying the penalty. Ultimately, that's Josh Harris's money. I don't really give two shits about it. Whatever he wants to do with it is fine. I would like for the team not to trade away good pieces, though, just to do that, because we are in a good place as far as what's going on the court. So maybe it will have helped the Sixers make their decision to be more competitive, because this is a weird thing. They're going to have Paul George back healthy and rested if he comes back in the regular season with 8 games to go, as the current suspension holds. And they should be on track to make a playoff spot with him healthy. So I would think they're probably not going to go big, but they should at least try to add some pieces and maybe move some salary around the edges. I know people have mentioned Andre Drummond and a couple of other creative things Mooey could do. Still don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, they could do any number of things tomorrow at the deadline. But on the court as it currently stands, this is why I think that they should try to build the team and at least make this into a team that can make a run in the playoffs, because they're currently riding a 5-game winning streak after a nice win over the Warriors on Tuesday night. That's the longest win streak of this season, and I believe the first time they've had a 5-game winning streak since the 23-24 season, 2 years ago. Last year, there was no way in heck they were ever going to get to 5 wins in a row, I don't think. Largely, the team was carried by Therese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, who had a nice bounce-back game on Tuesday, and Kelly Oubre Jr., who unfortunately has been the subject of some trade rumors. Gosh, I hope not. He's been one of the best contributors on the team this year, and has been one of the guys that's made this team a fun watch. So as long as they don't do anything really, really stupid tomorrow, the Sixers should continue to be a fun team down the stretch. They're currently sitting at the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference with a 29-21 record, so over 500 pretty well, and on track to make those playoffs, as I said before. I'm not going to get my hopes too high, but I'm still optimistic that they can make some noise in the East, which is also wide open. I heard something really weird that the Cleveland Cavaliers think that they are still close enough that they might end up picking up our old boy James Harden, who we saw the other night in Los Angeles with the Clippers. They might even pick him up, try to bring him in as the final piece. Best of luck to you. But whatever the case may be for those teams, I'm hoping that the Sixers will improve the team and continue to be a strong force the rest of the season. I'm not getting too high, but I'm being realistic about that. I hope so. The other active team in the winter, the Philadelphia Flyers, finally got some points in an overtime loss versus the LA Kings on Saturday, and then a win versus the Washington Capitals on Tuesday, a couple days ago here. However, that is the lone point of positivity so far recently because they are 3-8-3 since that big win versus the Anaheim Ducks I mentioned on last podcast. And this includes them getting those 3 wins included them getting 5 out of the 6 possible points on a West Coast trip that saw maybe the worst loss of the season versus the Utah Mammoth. By the way, that's a really dumb team name. I just wanted to throw that out there. You couldn't make it Mammoths, plural, Mammoth. It means very large. The Utah Very Large. Good job. Anyway, Flyers have been seeing injuries piling up over the course of the season, and the goal scoring, as I mentioned before on this podcast, has really dried up, other than Owen Tippett and Travis Konechny, who both had hat tricks in this recent stretch. All things considered, that's not too terrible to see your 2 of your best players playing well, but the rest of the team around them, unfortunately, has been really, really slacking. The Olympic break starts tomorrow, and it probably couldn't come at a better time. The Flyers currently sit at 25-20-10, 8 points out of a playoff spot with a tough mountain to climb at the end of the season. But there is still plenty of time in this season as we have the Olympic break coming up. Some guys will not be playing, and most of them will be able to rest, get healthy. Hopefully we get Tyson Forster back sooner than later from his injury and getting him back on the ice to be a productive contributor to this team. I'm still actually toying with the idea of going to see the Flyers on February 7th when they're here in Pittsburgh, because I haven't been to a hockey game yet this year, if you can believe that. In fact, I haven't been to a sporting event in quite a while. I'd have to think back. It might even been baseball season last time I was at a game. So still thinking about that, still hoping for the best with this team. I would love to see them somehow sneak into a playoff spot. And as I said before on this pod, get at least one round of playoff experience. Even if they get their asses smoked 4-0 in the first round, I still want some of these kids to get that experience of what it is like playing in the playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see. There were several big-ticket news items around the Philadelphia Eagles recently. They hired an offensive coordinator. Sean Mannion was hired from the Green Bay Packers. Former quarterback coach and former backup quarterback is now on board as our offensive coordinator. I like the move. One of those negative things that you would see online recently was a lot of people were really grading this move and raking it over the coals. Terrible hire. Honestly, it could have been a lot worse. Ignore the Negadelphians. I actually think this guy has a lot of promise. Some people have made the parallel to Andy Reid, who was hired as head coach of the Eagles after he was a quarterback's coach in Green Bay. That famous picture we've all seen of the Green Bay staff that produced Andy Reid out of the Mike Holmgren coaching staff and all of the other coaches that came out of that tree. Haven't looked up that picture in a while and seen how the rest of that team is doing and seen what other coaches have come out of the Andy Reid tree, but that's a deep dive for another day. Any rate, so yeah, Kevin Mannion is in as the offensive coordinator. I'm optimistic and hopeful about this one because, hey, they did the bare minimum, which was to get rid of what most of us thought and agreed was the biggest problem. The offense was not creative, it wasn't clever, it wasn't good enough with the level of talent that they have on this roster. Kevin Mannion has a chance to do better, and really that's all he has to do is do better, and I think this team has a chance to go back to a Super Bowl and maybe even win it. Now, the unfortunate side of this is that Jeff Stoutland, it was just announced today, has announced that he is leaving the Eagles after a long tenure with the team, offensive line coach, and one of the few positives that came out of a very frustrating Chip Kelly 3 years back in 2013 through 2015. Jeff Stoutland stuck around through all that, was there obviously for all three of the Eagles' recent Super Bowl appearances and the 2 wins. So many great stories have come from him being a coach. Jordan Mailata, of course, one of the biggest victories, guy who came over from Aussie League football and had never played American football, but came in and became an absolute force, Pro Bowl, All-Pro offensive lineman. Of course, you have Jason Kelce, surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, Lane Johnson was already an established talent, but he's gotten even better over the years with Jeff Stoutland's tutelage, and the list goes on and on and on. He's done a tremendous job with this team over the years, and that is a huge loss that will be difficult to fill. No news yet on who's going to replace him, but that is something that gives me a little bit of pause right there, and want to also mention that we're very thankful for as a fan, very thankful for everything that Jeff Stoutland did for this team. We certainly wouldn't have 2 Super Bowl victories without that tremendous play of that offensive line and everything they did. As far as there is apparently a football game, one more going this Sunday. You might have heard of it. It's called the Superb Owl, I believe. I'm probably not going to watch it. I have some friends coming in from out of town, and I'm just really not all that interested in it, even though the Sam Darnold story angle, his comeback, has been really cool to watch from a football fan perspective. I can't get excited about Seahawks-Patriots. Don't know what it is. That the Sam Darnold angle is not enough to bring me back in, and I don't even really want to hate watch the Patriots. I know a lot of people are saying that their dislike still, it isn't there anymore because Brady retired, but I don't know, guys. They were annoying and insufferable for 2 decades, and I was really hoping that we could go quite a while without having to deal with obnoxious Boston fans in social media circles and as we go out and into our day-to-day sports fan lives. I say that, but this is probably putting the energy out in there that, of course, they're going to win on Sunday. I'm not making a prediction, but all this to say, I'm probably not going to be watching the Super Bowl unless I happen upon it in whatever activities we get into with my friends in from out of town. But if you are, enjoy yourselves, be safe in doing that, and I guess go Seahawks. So the Phillies had some more news as well after the JT Realmuto signing and missing out on Bo Bichette. Harrison Bader, outfielder that we picked up at the trade deadline last year, signed a 2-year, $10 million deal with the Giants. The Phillies could have done that. They had the money to do that. They chose not to. Overall, it just caps off a very blah offseason. I, again, understand the negative fan sentiment. We're now 17 years removed from a World Series title, and coming up on, I guess it was 3 years ago that the Phillies were in 3 playoffs ago that the Phillies were in the World Series. So it's been a long while since we've won. It's been a little bit here since we've been there and had a chance to win. Granted, Rob Thompson's run of success has been nice. It's great to have a contender and to know that when the team steps on the field opening day, there's a chance that they're going to make the playoffs and have that opportunity. But you want to see them get over the hump, of course. And I'm hopeful for a good season, but I understand the negative fan sentiment because of all the things the Phillies didn't want to do this offseason, really. It was to just leave people feeling uninspired. Because if they have one of these classic, it wasn't so much last year, but in years prior where the Phillies come out of the gate slow, there's going to be that tension, and we're going to wonder, can they still pick it up? And until they prove us wrong, there's going to be that doubt. As positive as they try to remain, I totally understand why people would feel bad about this team and not excited, because really it is mostly just a team that's been run back, other than a few pieces who've left and a few small additions around the edges. I mean, Brad Keller in the bullpen is surely an improvement, but that's not the kind of name that's going to get people going, oh man, we really got to go out and watch the Phillies this year. I, of course, will. Most of you who are dedicated fans will, but the casual fan is not going to be won over by these moves until this team really starts to make hay in the postseason again. And we'll probably see another playoff appearance this year. Beyond that, I'm not 100% sure, but crazier things have happened. So don't try to paint the season as over. We're in February. Pitchers and catchers report in 9 or 8 days. I forget which exact day, but we're there. It's almost spring training time, folks, and there is something exciting about that, especially after we've had 2 feet of snow dumped on us. It's been this legendary cold snap that we've experienced recently. There's something exciting about pitchers and catchers getting on the field, albeit in Florida, but it's a sign of spring coming. and I look forward to that. I'll finish up with the Philadelphia Union, who wrapped up their preseason international friendlies in Spain over the weekend. They finished 1-1-1 and are now headed back stateside. They're probably already here. There was a dominating 4-0 victory at the end of it. I don't remember the name of the club, but let's realistically look at this. These were lower tier teams in the Spanish league and other European leagues that are not necessarily top tier talent. And of course, it is also the preseason. They're playing extended games to try to get as many guys into the squad as possible. And in the preseason, teams are working through things as well. So you might be the beneficiary of a team trying to run a new defensive structure that isn't quite battened up yet, but nonetheless, 1-1-1 heading home to stateside. MLS preseason begins for the Union on February 7th. They open actually with the CONCACAF Champions League game on February 18th versus Defense Force FC, and February 21st in MLS play versus DC United. Actually, that's in DC. Wonder if I could make the trip down there. It's not too far away of a drive, and depending on what tickets are, it's on a weekend. I might have to look into that. All right, good note for myself. So that is the current state of Philadelphia sports teams. Not all negative, some positive, some middle, and overall, I just hope that you've gotten some out of this that'll make you look at things and say, hey, even if there's a lot of negative sentiment online, we can try to be a little bit more positive and uplifting in what we're seeing out there on the field and on the ice, on the court, and so on. I'll finish as I always do by outroing the beer. I mentioned at the top of the show, I chose for today's selection Mooey by Bonn Place Brewing Company in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The description on Untapped reads, a not-so-ordinary bitter English-style pub ale, light, smooth, and easy drinking. Notes of biscuit, toffee, and sexual desires. I'm not sure what that sexual desires is all about, but I did notice that when I'd had this beer, I had it recently. This was a pleasant surprise. I was out with friends at Old Thunder Brewing Company here in Pittsburgh, and they had it on their cask, the beer engine. So it was a nice way to serve this style of beer. Some of you who know me well know that I really do enjoy the pub ales. Probably why I enjoyed to watch European football and soccer so much too. Is very nice, smooth, easy drinking beer. On the cask was even better, but I'm sure that those of you who live in the Lehigh Valley can find this at Bonn Place. I haven't been there in a number of years, but there was always a great atmosphere there. And of course, the city of Bethlehem in that particular area has a lot of great things going for it, and it's good to see that Bonn Place is still making very solid beer. I did enjoy this one. I was again pleasantly surprised to see that they shipped all the way out here and had it on tap in Pittsburgh, so you could probably find it around your area as well. I'm not sure how far the listener base goes, but if you do have a chance to look for it, or anything by Bonn Place, they always do a fantastic job with their beers, and look for Mooey by Bonn Place Brewing out of Bethlehem, PA. That will do it for this episode of the Way Outta Here podcast. I do appreciate you swinging by. If you don't already, please follow me on the social media platform of your choice on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Way Outta Here Podcast, on Blue Sky, Way Outta Here Pod, on the blog, wayoutaherepodcast.blogspot.com. And if you've got any feedback or beer recommendations, please send them to wayoutaherepodcast@gmail.com. Available wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple and Spotify. A rating would be fantastic. On Apple, a review would be even fantasticer. Yes, I made up that word. Thank you so much in advance. Until next time, be safe in whatever it is that you do.